You know there's this guy, he walks barefoot in the snow and never gets sick with the help of his breathing. What do you mean breathing? You can't do that with breathing. It's just breathing. That was me a few years ago, and boy was I wrong. I only came back to this guy and his breathing technique about a year later to truly understand why. Today I'll talk about the history of this technique, how and why it works, and how it has changed my life for the better. If you're new here, I'm Modern Monk, and in this channel I explore and promote ways to have more mindfulness in our daily lives. A skill that helps us stay in the present moment, which is the key to living a happier life, as our minds are often trapped either in the past or the future, which makes no sense because the present moment is all we really have. So let's talk about this guy and his breathing technique. What I have in mind is Wim Hof. If you haven't heard about him, I highly suggest you look him up. The predecessor to the Wim Hof breathing technique comes from the Tibetan Buddhists and has been around for the past 1,000 years. Its history begins around the 10th century AD when an Indian man named Naropa got bored of his domestic life, packed a bag, divorced his wife, and marched east until he was surrounded by stone walls. This dazzling place was the Buddhist university Nalanda, where scholars from all over East gathered to study holistic medicine and astronomy. Naropa excelled at the university and decided to put what he has learned to use. So he set out for the Himalayas and lived in a cave near the Bagmati River, which is now known as the Kathmandu, Nepal. The cave was freezing cold, but Naropa harnessed the power of his breath to keep warm. The technique he used became known as tuma, which is a Tibetan word that means inner fire. Wim Hof essentially took this technique, put a twist on it, and popularized it for public use. He popularized it by doing feats that seemed humanly impossible. To quote Andrew Huberman, a professor of neurobiology at Stanford, Wim violated the rules laid out in medical textbooks so drastically that scientists had to pay attention. He has climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in shorts, he has ran a half marathon above the Arctic Circle in freezing cold, wait for it, barefoot, and has stood in a container surrounded by ice cubes for nearly 2 hours. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. He has done much more. Why should I care, you may ask? He's just one in a billion, like Leonardo da Vinci or Michael Jordan just when it comes to cold exposure. Well, it turns out you would be wrong. Very conveniently, Wim Hof actually has a twin brother. And his brother is just a truck driver and does not possess any of the Yeti superpowers that his brother does. So we can draw a conclusion that all of the things he's doing are highly trainable. The thing is, he's been doing them for a very long time, so he's just very good at them. The technique itself is fairly simple, it's quite easy to learn but hard to master, like many things in life. It's usually at least 3 rounds, but it can be done for as many as you can handle. One round consists of 30 to 45 deep inhalations, followed by a breath hold on empty lungs, and after that a recovery breath hold on full lungs for about 15 seconds. And as I said, repeat that for 3 rounds or how many you can handle, and you have your Wim Hof breathing technique. So now we know how it works, let's talk about why it works. You see, breathing is a power switch to a vast network we call the autonomic nervous system. There are 2 parts to this system. Each serves an opposite function, each equally important to our well-being. The first, called the parasympathetic nervous system, stimulates restoration and relaxation. The mellow buzz you feel during a long massage or the sleepiness you feel after you had a big meal happens thanks to the parasympathetic nervous system. It opens our eyes and makes our tears flow at weddings, it prompts salivation before meals, it loosens our bowels to eliminate waste, and stimulates our genitals before we have sex. That's why it's sometimes called the feed and breathe system. The other half of this equation is the sympathetic nervous system. It signals our organs to get ready for action. The negative feeling you feel when someone cuts you off in traffic or wrongs you at work is the sympathetic nervous system ramping up. When this system is stimulated, it redirects blood flow from less vital organs such as your bladder and your stomach to more important ones for your survival, such as your brain and your muscles. Your heart rate increases, adrenaline kicks in, your blood vessels contract, and your mind sharpens. This system makes us leaner and meaner so we can fight harder and run faster when we are confronted with danger. That's why it's often called the fight or flight system. It is important to have a general understanding of these systems, as the Wim Hof breathing technique stimulates and manipulates both of them. This practice is most potent when combined with cold exposure. Now, I won't go into much detail on cold exposure, as it deserves a video of its own. But together with the breathing technique, it can essentially release stress hormones such as adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine on command. It is quite remarkable the level of control you can have over your body with the help of your breath. The way I see it, you can split the benefits into two sections. Firstly, the easier to grasp and understand physical ones, and then the not so easy to grasp and understand, but probably even more important, as I'll explain later, spiritual ones. So let's look at the physical side of things. Firstly, stress resilience. You see, stress is just a neurochemical state of your body. Therefore, your body can't really tell the difference if it's your boss yelling at you, you're suffocating, or you're freezing to death. By willingly exposing myself to stress during the Wim Hof breathing technique, I became much more stress resilient in my everyday life. I noticed being far less affected by stressful situations at work, at traffic, or anywhere really. The overbreathing combined with the breath hold helps your body learn to need less oxygen at rest. In other words, the Wim Hof breathing technique improves your CO2 tolerance, making you breathe less. Therefore, your heart has less work to do. As you learn to breathe less, in some sense you're lengthening your lifespan. I like the yogi perspective on this, where they measure their lifespan not in the years they have left to live, but in the breaths they have left to breathe. And it makes a lot of sense, as your life will end with the last breath. Since we live in such a stress-prone environment, overbreathing is a common issue. You get stressed at work and then you stress yourself even more by unconsciously breathing too much. You get into this vicious cycle. So try to notice your breath next time you get stressed at work. Try to notice if you're breathing a little bit too much. I personally was. The technique has also greatly improved my sports performance. I work out quite a lot. I do strength training and some form of cardio, usually running, every single day. Remember how I talked about releasing all these important hormones on command? Well, to no surprise, they can be very potent when it comes to sports performance. There's a slightly different version of this technique where you focus more on the overbreathing part. One round there consists of 45 to 60 deep inhalations followed by a breath hold on full lungs for 15 seconds. And you repeat that for 3 to 4 rounds. Feel free to try it yourself, but be mindful. You might need to learn how to consciously breathe first, as that is a skill that needs learning as well. The stress-related hormones can also greatly improve your immune system. Here I would like to share a story with you. It all starts a few years back when I tell my friends, "What do you mean breathing? You can't do that with breathing." It's just breathing. As I said, I only came back to it a year later, when I was trying to learn long-distance freestyle swimming. The very first thing you need to learn when you're learning that is to stay calm underwater and how to breathe. I remember I met up with my mom and I told her I was learning to swim. I told her that the thing I was struggling the most is breathing, and my mom said, "Are you doing breathing exercises?" And I thought to myself, breathing exercises? You can train breathing? I said no, but I'll look into it. You know what they say, always listen to your mom. So I'm sitting at home in front of my laptop googling breathing exercises and I find this guy Wim Hof and his breathing technique. I start practicing it daily, and when I start to practice something, I usually dive quite deep into it. So I also picked up his book, The Wim Hof Method. It was not the best book I've read, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, because I found many things to relate to. A couple of months later of practicing this technique more than once a day combined with cold exposure, I find myself in my bed at 4 in the morning. I'm waking up getting ready to do my usual sports routine, but I'm feeling way off. Usually the first thing that comes to my mind when I wake up is where food. I'm really hungry in the mornings. But I'm feeling a little sick. You know those flu-like symptoms where you sort of want to puke, your muscles are aching in a weird way, and a slight headache is developing? As I was preparing to stay in bed to call in sick for my desk job, I remembered this guy Wim Hof again and how he never gets sick, how he said he can cure himself with his breathing. There's even a study where they had him injected with E. coli bacteria and he didn't get sick thanks to his breathing. So I went on my yoga mat, laid down and did a really intense session of this breathing technique. After it, I felt exhausted and took a 20-minute nap. After that, I woke up and I felt hungry. I went, had breakfast, and proceeded to complete all of my morning workouts as if nothing had happened. I was so amazed, and it was at that point that I truly became a believer and understood the power of belief. I actually have not gotten sick ever since. I remember even calling my mom after this and told her about this incident and said, "Mom, this is the most interesting thing that has ever happened to me." And I stand by this statement to this day. Do you have any stories where you didn't believe something and then something happened and then you started believing it? Or maybe you have some stories related to conscious breathing. Let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to read all about it. With the physical side of things out of the way, let's talk about the spiritual ones that I think are probably even more important. The way I see it, the real power of this technique is to ground you in the present moment. It helped me realize how much can happen in such a short span of 10 to 15 minutes. You see, to get anything out of anything in life, you will need a certain degree of consistency. And in most cases, it won't be these physical, graspable benefits that will give you this consistency. What will make you consistent is establishing a mindful connection with any activity. Because once you start enjoying the process of actually doing, rather than doing it because of the benefits, then you will come back day after day after day without any effort. And then all the benefits are just that, benefits, a nice to have. And the activity remains as part of your essence. If you're still with me, and I'm highly surprised that you are, but all jokes aside, if you found this interesting, you might want to check out my guided Wim Hof breathing session. Stay mindful, and I hope to see you in the next one.